Vladimir, welcome to Erbil edition.
Thank you so much for the invitation.
Thank you for agreeing to come here. And I wanted to talk to you because you have a lot of experience, one of those living in the Kurdistan region longer than many people. You have learned Kurdish, you have traveled across the Kurdistan region. And so I thought your insight and stories would be very interesting to our audience.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. And how long has it actually been that you have been living in Kurdistan, if I may ask?
Well, the first time I came to Kurdistan, it was in 2009. But that time I was doing an internship at Rudao at the time. And but later that I keep coming back every year. And then in 2014, after I finished 2 master degrees, one in Kurdish studies and one in conflict studies, I basically decided to live permanently in Kurdistan. And 1 month later, ISIS attacked Mosul, and then in August they attacked Kurdistan. So it became very busy for me. So I was all the time busy with covering the front lines and the war against ISIS until 2019. So it's been actually permanently since 2014.
10, 11 years.
Yeah.
And
around
it
11,
was
12
all,
years.
your work is everywhere. If one does a quick search on the internet, your name will come up attached to many articles written from the front lines. You even went to Rojava or Syria, right?
Yes.
To write, and it's everywhere. So has it calmed down? I guess now there is not much war or frontline work going on.
Well, I remember when in 2014 there was a lot of foreign journalists actually in Kurdistan. There were so many that I had like a logistics group on Facebook, and they had over 1,000 members. But if you look now to the number of foreign journalists in Kurdistan, you could almost say it's not zero, but let's say very few compared to that time because a lot of journalists, they were going to Mosul from Erbil. That's why it was also popular, because people were covering like the front line from Erbil. So in the beginning it was the Peshmerga front lines, but once the Peshmerga basically controlled the areas they wanted, then it became the Iraqi army front line. And at that time it was very easy for journalists to go from Erbil and then go to Mosul. But now, after the war in Ukraine, and now also you have the war in Gaza, you have the general conflict, the fall of Assad now also. So there's more focus now again on Syria than in the past. So the focus has shifted a lot to other topics in the region and outside of the region. But I think sometimes still the Kurdistan region gets some attention, but most of the time it's in relation to things which is happening next to Kurdistan, not inside Kurdistan itself. So there's not a lot of attention at the moment for issues like what is the main news in Kurdistan. It's mostly about the problems between Baghdad and Erbil and domestic issues. So there's not a lot of attention for this kind of issues in the international media because they're more focused on bigger stories like ISIS.
Exactly. I mean, there's not hot topics or any major thing going on. And international media normally goes to where there is some action happening.
Exactly.
Like the ISIS days, as you say.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, during the Israeli-Iran conflict, there were some journalists that came to Kurdistan, also very few. But in general, not so much. And also, I think the Syria conflict has also gained a lot of attention.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of journalists, they are going to Damascus now. And even the Rojava that you mentioned, there are still journalists going there, but it's also not like as in the past. Because there's also not a major war anymore. And I think also a lot of the media, they're kind of bored of these stories of, you have a Dutch foreign ISIS woman in a camp. Or, like you had all this focus on Shamima Begum in the UK. I think also the focus on those ISIS women and stuff, it's gone down. So there's less attention for that. And also a lot of those foreign women and children, they have been repatriated. So there's not so many of them left. But the men are still stuck in the prisons.
That's Al-Hol camp?
Yeah, Al-Hol and Rosh camp. And then you also have the prisons where you have the male prisoners. but it seems no one cares about them. Or
Oh, I always thought there's just Al-Hol camp, but based on what you're saying, there's more than one.
yeah, I
They,
mean, they're basically IDP camps,
Yeah.
and then you have a section for the foreigners, and then for the Syrians and the Iraqis, and then you have the prisons where you have the male prisoners, and they are mixed with foreigners and Syrians. It's all mixed together. So if you want to have to do an interview there, they say, okay, which nationality you want to see? Do you have a name or something? And then if you're lucky, they will bring one from your country in front of you, and then you interview them. But sometimes they don't have someone available.
Wow, that's
So-
how. So you have been there. Have you been to any of those camps or prisons?
Yeah, I mean, at the time there were still a lot of Dutch ISIS women in the camps, but I think most of them have been returned to the Netherlands now because of court orders. The government didn't want to bring them back, but the judge ordered their return because they basically warned them that if they don't put them on trial, then if they come back, there will be no trial. So they had the choice basically of if when they come back immediately they get released or there will be a trial. So yeah, I went to the camp. There were a bunch of Dutch women, and they had different stories. And I went to prison. I interviewed actually the husband of Shamima Bagunsi. He's a Dutch convert to the Islamic religion, and he claimed that he didn't fight in Kobani and that he was just there, and it was kind of a weird story. But he was injured in Kobani, so it looks like that he fought in the battle for Kobani. But he doesn't get a lot of attention. Like it seems to him, he's sort of forgotten while his wife became sort of almost a celebrity in the UK. You know?
He's still in Syria in prison.
Yeah, he's still in prison because the men are still there. The women and the children, most of them have returned. And the Americans, they took back most of their nationals.
Wow. And
Yeah.
I heard that they were supposed to shut down the camp and send many of them to Iraq. Am I right or wrong?
Well, I mean, there's a lot of pressure because you have this thing that the U.S. is talking with Baghdad about withdrawing, and they have until 2026. And after that, it's not really clear what is going to happen with the coalition, if the U.S. army is going to stay in Iraq and the Kurdistan region and Syria or not. So I think what they're trying to do is repatriate as much as people as possible before 2026. And that's mostly focused on the Iraqis and the Syrians, but also on the foreigners. So I think recently the UK, they took back some children, for instance.
Who is paying for the running cost of this camp or these prisoners? It must be costly. Is it Rojava authorities, Americans, who?
I think it's a mix. There are NGOs that are working in the camps. Then for the prisons, there's training by the coalition for the prison guards, and they provide some equipment. And then you also have organizations like USAID that were doing some programs in the camp and other NGOs. Some of this funding has basically dried up because the USAID work has been sort of stopped almost completely. And a part of it's funded locally by the local administration there. But because it's foreign ISIS women and stuff, so there's NGOs and others, there's some funding to keep those camps running. So it's not only in the hands of the local authorities. There are some, also the male prisons, let's say the prisons for the male prisoners, there's also some training and some support. But it's sort of limited still.
And they have children with them as well in the camp, right?
Yeah, I mean, the children, they are in the camps. Also, there are some children in rehabilitation centers, I think. And also, I think there's some male children that are in prisons, actually. Or so there's a lot of discussions about these camps and also what is going to happen. And you saw that there was a statement from the U.S. administration that Damascus should take care of the camps.
Oh, from now on.
Yeah, but that's still a discussion. So that's going to take some time. There's still a lot of discussions between Damascus and the SDF, and there was actually a meeting supposed to be taking place in Paris and then got cancelled. So there's still a lot of work to be done. But anything what happens also in Iraq or the Kurdistan region, it has direct effect on Syria because the U.S. troops in the Kurdistan region are sort of also logistically supporting the troops that are in northeast Syria. So it's sort of interlinked with each other, the Erbil base with the stuff which is going on in Syria. But recently they moved some of the troops from Ain al-Assad and from the Victoria base in Baghdad to Kurdistan. And I think some of them, they went to Kuwait.
I have not been to the Kurdish areas of Syria or Rojava. I've never been. I have been to Syria, and that is almost 20 years ago. I went to Damascus for tourism when Assad was still in power, 2005 or 6. So you have been to Rojava. What do the authorities in Rojava think of these prisons? I heard that they don't want that responsibility. Sometimes in some places I've read that they say it's too much for us, asking the international community to take care of it. Based on your interviews and travels, what do they think? Do they like that situation, or do they want to be rid of that camp?
I think they are, it's a sort of double-edged sword. At the same time, they want to have international support, and one of the reasons they have international support is that they have all these prisoners and these families. So if there's no prisons and families, I think there will be less reason for the international community to support them. For instance, why Western diplomats, even some of them based in Erbil, they travel to northeast Syria is because they have to pick up the children. So at the other hand, it's also gives them more support internationally. But the other hand, also they say we want these foreigners to be repatriated, and it is difficult for them to deal with so many of these different families. The security, there's always security incidents in the camp. But as I mentioned in the beginning, is that at the same time it gives them a form of international support and diplomatic support. So if there's no more camps and these camps are in the hands of Damascus, then why, for instance, NGOs would work in these areas? Or because the focus is mostly on these camps. I mean, there's no international NGO working on Kobani, for instance, or Kamishli. I mean, most of the focus is all on the camps because that's the main focus of the international community. So it's sort of like also what you have here in Iraqi Kurdistan, that a lot of focus from internationally was mostly focused on Mosul because it was like before the capital of ISIS in Iraq. And so a lot of focus was on doing stuff in Mosul, but not so much in Duhok or in Erbil.
The base was here, like the
the base was here basically, but they were like more focused on Mosul rather than doing something here, apart from helping, of course, the IDPs, but also there's that decision of Baghdad to they want to close down the camps basically. So also I think in the Kurdistan region, the number of NGOs is decreasing also with the lack of funding and USAID stopping a lot of funding for programs here. So,
is there any country that says, I have nothing to do with my citizens in those prisons in Syria? I don't want them back. I don't want to hear about them.
I mean, there's some countries that are saying that, but the thing is that there's ongoing court cases. So that's why they are sometimes forced to take back these people, even if they don't want to. Because the courts, they basically say if you don't bring them back, then the legal cases we have against those people will be basically cancelled. So that's why it creates a risk if those people escape or somehow do end up back, then they will be immediately in the streets. So also they don't want that. So that's why it's in a legal, because locally they said they want to prosecute those fighters inside Syria. But then they didn't get any international support for that to force and set up an international court, because there are still a lot of like things going on legally that legally it's still a bit ambiguous. Like you have like a sort of semi-autonomous region which is not recognized, not a recognized court system. So a lot of countries don't want to be really involved in that either. So a lot of them, they don't want their citizens back, and in some cases even they took away their citizenship so that they don't return. For instance, the UK, I think they did that in some cases, and there were a lot of court cases about that. So you have some people from the UK, for instance, that are stuck in Syria because the UK doesn't want to bring them back. But it also depends on these legal battles between the lawyers of those women and men and the governments, basically.
In Iraq, do we have anything similar in the rest of Iraq, prisons for former ISIS families?
I think, to my understanding, I didn't focus so much on that. There's a few foreigners in Iraq also, but you almost never hear about them in the media. And I don't think you have like families with children or something. Like, even if they have that, maybe it's very limited. But there were some, I think, male fighters that were brought actually from Syria to Iraq or that were captured here. But in general, you almost hear nothing about them. Basically, it's like, and you of course have now that they're trying to bring back the Iraqis from the camps in Syria to Iraq. So you have a camp, I think it's the Jeddah camp, that they bring in the Iraqi ISIS families back.
So based on what you are saying, I think that there is, for journalists or for the media, there is nothing going on in Mosul, in Western Iraq, in Rojava to write about compared to the conflict days. Now, there is nothing in there. I'm sure there are many interesting stories,
Yeah.
but it seems that no one is interested in going there to write about anything. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think there are still some journalists that will cover these kind of issues. For instance, the situation in northeast Syria after the fall of Assad regime. So there's like some journalists that come, but a number of journalists coming to Iraq in general and to Syria. In Syria, it's more now because of the fall of Assad, but northeast Syria, it's a little bit less. So I think in general, what you said, like because there's not like a very active conflict situation at the moment, so there's less attention. But even in conflicts like Ukraine, it's the same, because in the beginning, when the war started, it was like a lot of attention. But then when the war keeps on going, it sort of becomes like a repetition of the same story, battle over certain cities, etc. So the tension also goes a little bit down. Although Europe is very much focused on Ukraine, much more than, for instance, the US. So it also depends on the focus of the media, and also if there's like any form of a linkage. For instance, Dutch media is very interested if there's any Dutch angle, if it's a Dutch foreign fighter or the Dutch ISIS family, they will be more interested than if it's just Syria. So, for instance, recently there was a man from a Syrian, most likely asylum seeker in the Netherlands. He went to Sweden and he had some weapons and he was showing off on videos and stuff. And that got attention in the Dutch media, not so much the conflict in Sweden between the Druze and the government, but this got more attention because he's Dutch, supposedly applying for Dutch citizenship. He was not fully Dutch yet, probably. So that gets attention, and then the Dutch politicians reacted to that, like Geert Wilders was complaining about it. How do we get this person inside in the Netherlands? So then it becomes part of a domestic debate. Which you don't have with the Kurdish issue or this kind of things. It's not so much part of a domestic debate, which is different, for instance, from Gaza, because Israel and Palestine, it's a very hot topic in the Netherlands also, locally, domestically, a lot of protests and this kind of things. But we don't see foreigners protesting for Kurdistan in the streets of the Netherlands for some reason. So,
how do they find out that someone, an asylum seeker, comes back from the Netherlands, goes to Sweden? I think it's all social media, right?
yeah, because you have all these people using TikTok and social media. So the person himself was publishing these videos. He was actually, I think, more a comedian or something, and he was trying to basically gain more followers, I think, by doing this. So it's basically
He shot himself in the foot.
yeah, because you also, during the war against ISIS, you had also foreign fighters, some of them with the Peshmerga, some of them with the Kurds in Syria. But some of them were not a big fan of posting stuff on social media, so they stayed out of the picture. But others, they got more into the media, and sometimes they got into trouble because of that.
When was the last time you went to Syria, any part of Syria?
I think the last time was a very long time ago. I think it was maybe 2020, 2021. So it's been some time, and I'm more focused on. I'm not more focused on here, but I'm more in Iraqi Kurdistan than traveling the border all the time.
And you still write articles, stories?
Yeah, I write for a Kurdish magazine called the Kurdistan Chronicle. So this is more a magazine to basically also introduce foreigners to Kurdish topics like Kurdish culture, music, not so much politics, but a little bit of politics.
History,
and like things like the history of, for instance, I wrote a piece about the Acre and why it's Acre is so important, or on the Kurdish nature in Kurdistan, So it's not like such a hard political focus as what other Kurdish media has. But apart from that, I am also still writing pieces and articles for think tanks and international media. I've written about the things in Syria, the peace process in Turkey, how the peace process in Turkey between the Turkish state and the PKK affects the Kurdistan region. I've written some pieces about that for think tanks, and how it sort of also can positively impact the stability here and actually lead to, like if the peace process is successful, then also it will open up some areas, nature areas that were not accessible to hikers and tourism, which could be bad and good at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
Um, so I've written a lot about the situation. Basically, still I'm writing about the situation, like because there are so many things going on. And recently, also I wrote for a UK newspaper about basically the proxies of Iran in the region after the war in between Israel and Iran. So writing about a lot of different topics. So I think there's still a lot of things to write about, actually more than when you had this sort of period between 2000 and let's say 21 and 2023. There was not a lot of
Quiet,
attention. Yeah,
yeah.
it was a bit more quiet, basically.
Do you prefer working on the front lines and covering conflict, or writing slow pace or soft pieces on culture and history and that? What's the difference?
So the thing is with soft stories is that you have a little bit more time to go deeper. For instance, I've written about the Hamilton Road, and you could go very deep into the history and like talk with different people with expertise in that topic. So it's not like such a quick newsy piece.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's also good that you can focus, you can go more deep on certain subjects. So it's nice to write about those. But of course, also, I mean, I'm very much interested in the hard politics and like the geopolitical situation, because I also did conflict studies. So I like to also write about that. And like the front lines, of course, it's interesting, and there's still front lines from time to time. Although you don't have to be on the front line to write about the conflict itself. I mean, you don't have to be on the front line with a vest and stuff. You can
Exactly. Risk your life.
risk your life. You can interview people that have knowledge who are not sitting on the in the, because sometimes also the frontline journalism, it becomes too much focus just on the violence and stuff, and you
Exactly.
can also take the general bigger picture of a certain conflict. So yeah, it's sort of different. And also I sometimes write like longer pieces for think tanks. So I like that because you can go even more deeper on the geopolitical situation. And for instance, I wrote with former spokesperson of the coalition about this plans to withdraw the U.S. troops from Iraq and Syria. Although they don't call it a withdrawal officially, they call it like a moving to a bilateral relationship. So you could go very deep and you can talk to different people.
Do they commission you, these think tanks, or you approach them with the idea, or they approach you and say, write a piece for us about this topic? Because I don't know really how it works, writing for a think tank.
It depends. Sometimes they're looking for someone to write about a specific topic. For instance, I did this book on the U.S. relation with the SDF. So they were looking specifically for someone who could do that work and go underground. And sometimes you also do basically like what you do when you want to write freelance for a news organization. You pitch a certain article or policy piece or analytical article or policy paper. But they have different formats, so it's not like writing for you have just a future or something. It's like you have different formats of pieces. But mostly it looks like pitching for a newspaper, basically. But sometimes they come up themselves with ideas and they ask you to write about something. And I also had, for instance, I wanted to write a piece about the drone strikes targeting the Kurdistan region, and then the editor said, why you don't write about the peace process and how it affects the Iraqi Kurdistan region. So sometimes they also have their own topics in mind.
Their own ideas, yeah.
Yeah.
You mentioned earlier that you have done Kurdish studies.
Yes.
So what does that mean, to study Kurdish studies? Is it the language, the history, what is it about if one studies Kurdish studies, for example?
Well, Kurdish studies it's not just the language. So it's like it was the Kurdish studies program in Exeter University in the UK.
Was it the first time for them to open that program? I think.
I think it's
Or
one
the
of
first Kurdish studies in.
I think it's well, UK is not part of Europe anymore, so it's difficult to say that is the but it's basically one of the few Kurdish studies programs in the world, you could say. I mean, there are very few Kurdish studies programs because you have some universities also, for instance, they have like Kurdish lessons, but that's not the Kurdish studies program because the Kurdish studies program is more like you could say a mix of history and language and linguistics, and sometimes also like you study poetry or literature. Like it's sort of a combination of everything, of history, politics, culture, even religions. We had also courses about the different religions in the Kurdistan region. But even then, we were mixed with students from other Middle Eastern departments because there were not enough students. So we also got some courses on other topics like feminism in the Middle East. And so I didn't have to write only essays about Kurds, but sometimes also some other subjects related to the Middle East. But it's sort of like a mix of anthropology and history and language.
And who normally teaches in those places? Is it a Kurdish professor or a British professor with a lot of experience?
I mean, in my case, it was a British academic teaching Kurmanji and a Kurdish academic teaching Sorani. So it depends on the teacher, but there's also some programs, I think, in the United States where their Kurds are teaching Kurdish to students.
Yeah. But you had already been to Kurdistan, I think, traveled around, written articles.
Yeah.
Before you went to study your Kurdish studies.
Yeah. Yeah, but I wanted to make it more official, let's say. I felt like if I do a Kurdish studies program, then I also have an educational degree in that field. It's not just that I'm on the ground or something. I have something official.
The experience and the credential.
Yeah. And also for the language, because when you're all the time in the field, if you're always writing, you don't really have much time to focus on the language.
Yes.
So it also gave some more time to focus on the language, although it's too short because it was just a master program what I did. So.
But the language you have already learned, Kurdish, which one can you say of the two dialects you understand and speak more comfortably? Sorani, Kermanji?
Now I don't know anymore since I got married. So because I speak more Sorani now than Kurmanji at home. So so it's sometimes it's difficult for me to know the difference between the both. Like sometimes I get confused and I mix them both. They become like sort of Surmanji, But in general, it used to be Kurmanji, but I think it's moving more towards Sorani at the same time.
Exactly, based on where you live and the people you deal with.
Yeah. Although, of course, Erbil also, you have different Kurdish dialects are spoken in Erbil also because you have a lot of refugees from Rojava, and you have people speak Badini.
Yeah.
You also have people living here from Kurmanji or Badini, because you have some people, they divide Kurdistan. You have the Sorani part and the Badini part, but I think in reality it's sometimes very difficult to distinguish those two parts, especially in Hawler, because you have basically both in Hawler, but maybe Duhok and Slemani is different, but Hawler is very mixed.
Yeah, probably, exactly. I think you're right. It's like the meeting point of all the dialects.
Yeah, because you can go 30 minutes outside of Hawler and then suddenly you are in a Badini speaking area, and then the other area you have a Sorani speaking area. So I think it's very mixed. And also some of the tribes that are from a Badini background, they're living also, for instance, in Hawler.
Yeah, very, very true. Yeah, I come across them and they say they have been living around in the outskirts of Erbil for many, many years.
Yeah. And I think that's sometimes a misconception that they have about Kurdistan. They want to divide, for instance, the political division between the PUK and the KDP also into a dialect, which I think it is very difficult to make that distinction between Sorani. It's not like a division between dialects, actually.
Do you read and write as well in Kurdish?
I mean, Kurmanji I can read easily. But Sorani, I'm not so good in reading Sorani.
Because it's Arabic script.
Arab
scripture.
script, yeah. I mean, I had my exams in Arabic script in the university, but I never sort of. It was difficult for me to remember, and also because in the daily life I don't use so much written or reading. Like there's also because in Kurdistan it's sort of difficult because you have this large number of people that speak English, and you have all this Kurdish media that's in English. So you're not really forced into. You have to force yourself to focus on that. I guess
To learn it.
to learn it. So, I mean, I tried, but then like after I finished the university, like I got into this like frontline. So I didn't really have any time to focus on like sitting down and reading or listening. I was just like in the front. So speaking, it's very easy, but like reading, not so much.
What do people think when you go to somewhere, a taxi, someone's house, or somewhere where you speak Kurdish? You must have many stories.
I mean, it depends on, but yeah, I mean, sometimes some people are a bit surprised. They don't understand. Like they ask, is your father Kurdish or your mother is Kurdish? So people get a little bit confused because there's not. I mean, there are some foreigners now also that speak Kurdish. I mean, some of them are social influencers, media influencers that are having even like videos and stuff in Kurdish. But in general, like it's sometimes a bit confusing for people. Like sometimes they think I'm partly Kurdish, sometimes they think I'm fully Kurdish. Sometimes they know me already, so they know I'm not Kurdish. They see me on some TV program or something. So sometimes I'm also recognized in the street or or they know me as Zawa because I'm married to. And the video of the wedding, they went like viral on the social media.
Really?
Yeah, so even without us posting anything, like people posted stuff on TikTok and stuff. So yeah, it's difficult to control the media nowadays.
Because you are married to a Kurdish woman.
Yes.
That's wow.
Yeah.
And but I see these days on YouTube many vloggers come to Kurdistan. They want to come to Iraq, but they of course come to Kurdistan, still say this is Iraq, go to Iskan, go to Slemani, the mountains. Have you seen those videos from Sweden, from the UK? These travelers.
Yeah, I think it's like this world travelers, so they just want to add this country to the list. So that's why they always try to focus that they are in Iraq, but they don't go to the, you could say, proper Iraq, in my opinion. So they are in Kurdistan, but they sort of try to hide that they are in, I mean, it's still part of Iraq, Kurdistan region of Iraq, but they sort of try to sort of downplay the Kurdish identity of where they are. So that's a little bit an issue, but they just want to add another country to the list and
to their bucket list.
To their bucket list, and then they can say, "Oh, I was in Iraq," but it sort of sometimes gives like a little bit wrong picture of some things they try to depict in the videos they have, which is like early Kurdish culture related to Kurdistan. But what you can do, I mean, that's
exactly.
I mean,
it's a free world.
That's the vlogger thing, you know. They're also not, but I mean, also even for a lot of journalists, they were also saying, "Oh, I'm based in Iraq," because if you say I'm based in Iraq, it sort of gives more, oh, it's dangerous. And I mean, I also found a very old newspaper article in the student newspaper when I first did my internship in Kurdistan. So there was a student newspaper. They wrote an article about me, and it was also focus was Iraq. Because that's also what they know, you know. So it's sometimes also difficult because a lot of people still don't know what Kurdistan really is.
Yeah.
So when you tell them, "Oh, you're going to Erbil," say, "Oh, you're going to Iraq." So I think also, I mean, I think the war against ISIS changed a lot. I think it made Kurds much more internationally well known than before. But still, they have this thing that I remember. Also, there was one time that Kurdistan was trying to promote himself as the other Iraq, but I think that they don't do that anymore at the moment. Although I haven't seen that term for a long time anymore.
Exactly. It was, I think, PBS or CNN, an American channel, a documentary, The Other Iraq. That was the title.
Yeah.
And it still is, I think, The Other Iraq. It's very different from the rest of Iraq. But as you said, it's more attractive for a vlogger or for a reporter to say, I am in Iraq. They could be in Branduz on the mountains, but say, I am in Iraq.
Yeah, I mean, also a lot of the diplomats and foreigners that come to Kurdistan, they sometimes, their families of those people that come here, they have a different image of Kurdistan. So they think they are maybe in a, although even Iraq is not like that, but they think sort of like a sort of a constant situation of war or something like that. But even Iraq itself is not like that. So it's a misconception. But that's because what you read in the media, it's mostly conflict. You're not going to read stories about Shinkolbana or tourism in Babylon or Kurdish mountains. I mean, now it gets some traction. There have been some reports. For instance, the CNN had a report about tourism in Kurdistan. But in general, it's very difficult to get attention for this kind of topics because it's not a very popular thing.
Doesn't sell.
Yeah, it doesn't sell. I mean, I was always joking in the past with some people. I was saying like Dutch media is not interested in this kind of topic unless there's something Dutch, even if it's a Dutch cow. And then I did a story about Dutch cows in Halabja like years later. So I could find a way to sell that because it was sort of a weird, for Dutch media, it was sort of a weird topic. You know, it was not action, but it was something for them which was somehow straight, someone trying to bring Dutch cows to Kurdistan. So I did a story about the Dutch cows. So it was not just ISIS prisoners and war and this kind of stuff.
Holstein,
Yeah.
the Holstein cows. It's
Yeah.
very popular in Kurdistan
Yeah.
for many years, actually.
Yeah, and I think they're planning now to bring more, not just cows, also I think goats, and I also have the potatoes and everything. So
The one in Halabja, I thought it was only a goat farm.
yeah,
But you say they have cows as well. This is by the Halabja businessman, right? The
it's
Halabja group.
I think it's around 100 cows. It's I think not proper. I think it's Khurmal or something like.
Khurmal, because there's one right in a village in the outskirts of Halabja. I heard, I haven't been to that farm,
Yeah.
but from family and relatives, they said it's only goats, also imported, but I don't know from where.
Yeah. I'm so surprised about that because why you would import a Dutch goat because they have so many goats here. Dutch
Yeah,
cows.
I read somewhere that Kurds were the first people in the world to domesticate goats.
Yeah.
Have you heard that?
No.
That Kurds were the first ones to domesticate goats. And I think that's true because if you go to the Kurdish mountains, goats are so well adapted to mountains, and there's this strong connection between Kurdish villagers and goats and that. So it could be true, I think.
It's possible. You also see them at the most weird places. Like you're somewhere very high in the mountains in the middle of nowhere, and then suddenly you see some shepherd, they come with some animals, and then you're like, how the hell did you get there? Like, why you're here? This is like 8 hours walking from the, so you see them everywhere.
Last week in Halabja, I had a brief conversation with a shepherd, and he had 250 sheep. And I said, how about goats? He said, goats are not for here. Goats are for the mountains. Because he was in the open plains in Sharazur. It's just agricultural land.
Okay.
But he's right, goats are the mountain animals. So it makes sense if Kurds domesticated goats historically.
Yeah. But even I've seen cows in the Fellow Pond, so.
Really? That high?
So there was, they bring that. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
How about Iraq? Do you ever go to Iraq to write a story, to go to, as you said, Babylon tourism?
No, I mean, to be honest, I've been to areas in the so-called disputed territories between Erbil and Baghdad. I've been to areas like Kirkuk, Mosul, Sinjar, but not really not like in Basra or in Baghdad, or I've never been there. And also, it's also one of the reasons is because I don't know, some people say you don't need that, but basically in the past, now I think they sort of adopted the Kurdish system that you get a 30 days visa when you arrive. But in the old days, like you had to first leave Kurdistan and then you had to go to another country and then fly to Baghdad. And then you had to get a visa from an embassy in one of these countries. So because I never was really much in my own country since 2014, so I didn't really have much energy to go and stay and then wait for a visa and then go to Baghdad. I just flew directly to Kurdistan and got a 30 days visa. But now also Iraq, they made the visa much easier. So it's easier to go to Baghdad. But I think still you have to first leave the country and then come back again. So that makes everything a little bit more complicated. And to be honest, like I'm more, if you see, like I did Kurdish studies, so my focus is mostly on Kurds also in my writing. So that's why I never had really a lot of focus on, for instance, something like Baghdad, because you had a lot of like this, I don't know, some people call them parachute journalists, that they focus on different kind of topics. Like one day they're in Libya, one day in Ukraine, one day in Iraq, but I'm more focused on one specific area, which is actually, I would say, maybe dying out slowly, because in the past you had like a lot of, for instance, like a journalist based in one specific country, but that's also decreasing. Like most of the journalists, they have to cover more and more bigger areas because the number of foreign correspondents and the budget is decreasing. So I think it's promoting like more of this sort of parachute journalism, that you focus on. You say, "Oh, I'm a conflict journalist. Like I focus on conflict." So I mean,
Everywhere.
so that means you can go to Indonesia, you can go to anywhere there's conflict.
I agree. BBC has some of those journalists that one day they are in Kabul, the next day in Doha, then they go to Damascus.
Yeah.
They
Yes.
hop around.
So I think that creates also this culture of fixers, that you have the local fixers that basically helping these journalists to quickly get the story. Because if they would do just by themselves, I think it would be quite complicated to get the
Because
story.
they are there for 48 hours. So.
Yes. So that's why I think it creates this sort of culture of local fixers or helpers or assistants. But it does really, also it makes it much more easier to basically sometimes convince a journalist of a certain story, even if the story is not true, because they don't have the background to double check a certain story if it's true or not. So it can also create misconceptions sometimes, or that they are fooled by certain stories. And I think also the expertise internationally, it's decreasing a little bit. So sometimes you see, for instance, in the Dutch media, I sometimes read some stuff. I don't know where the hell they get this information from, because it's like they have no more budget for someone focused on the region. So sometimes they have people that are living in the Netherlands, and they are writing about some conflict because they have no choice,
That's
but
very
they don't have expertise.
Yeah. But I think it's very unfortunate that media in the Western world or everywhere, they forget about a country or a place when a conflict is over. Because in my own experience working as a journalist before, there is more stories after the conflict. There are more stories, I mean. When the conflict is over, that's when many realities come out, document facts, people's life stories. So it's sad in a way that some media organizations completely shut down the Iraq file or Kurdistan file because there's no conflict. But you have millions of people living here, and many stories come out after the conflict.
That's true. But most of the time with that conflict, it's like once the conflict is over, then they move to the next conflict. So that's why you see a lot of journalists rushing towards the story. And when it's, for instance, the battle for Mosul, like the liberation of Mosul, and then when Mosul was liberated, then after that, there was still like some journalists in the first year that they sometimes focus on the reconstruction of Mosul or something like that. But then you see it like it's becoming less. But if you have like a very active conflict, like for instance what you have in Ukraine or Gaza, then it gets more journalist traction. Although there's very limited access to Gaza, apart from the local journalists that are on the ground. But still, it gets super a lot of attention. But I think also one of the problems of the media in general, they have not really been able to reinvent themselves with all this Instagram and Facebook that are basically taking the advertising revenues from the newspapers. Because in the long time ago, the only place where you could do advertising, it was a newspaper or something like that. But nowadays, any company, they don't need any more a newspaper. They can just go directly sponsor a video or story. They can have their own little microphone or something. You see, even like in Kurdistan, you have some companies, they have their own journalists with a microphone with the logo of the company. So why the hell they need a TV station in Kurdistan?
There are real estate companies with their own.
Yeah, they have their own reporters. So then also I think for here, even in Kurdistan, I think it's somehow the same effect. Like people talk about the death of newspaper journalism in Kurdistan. But I think not the only reason is because you have so many TV stations. One of the reasons also is that there's no advertising money for this kind of stuff, also because of the social media.
If we compare, like historically, how has the Netherlands been with media? For example, the Americans or the British have cared more about media everywhere in the world.
No.
Is the Netherlands the same, like historically in the, let's say, 60s, 70s, 80s, when conflict happens, have they always been present or only been present if the Netherlands was involved?
I mean, in general, they have people that focus on different conflicts. So it's not only when the Netherlands is involved, because the Netherlands is not so much involved in so many countries like these other countries. I mean, the Dutch army, they are present in Iraq and Kurdistan, not in Syria, but it's not one of the reasons why Dutch media focus on a conflict. But in general, the Dutch media, they have also sort of a public and a private media. And they have sort of like historically you had sort of like that the Dutch society was sort of divided. You had the Catholics and the Protestants and the left wing and this and that. So you still have that a little bit in the media, that you have like media is more ideological to the right or to the left, or you have Christian newspapers. So they still have that. And then you also have TV stations with different focuses. And you have, as I said, the public broadcaster, something like a Dutch version of the BBC, but a little bit a different system. And then you have like private media. So there's different news media, but it's very different from other countries. For instance, Germany, you have a lot of publicly funded, government-funded media, a lot. But in the Netherlands, we have a few. We have a few public broadcasters and then more private media.
Fewer. Wow.
Yeah.
And I have recorded, or I had a conversation with the Consul General of the Netherlands a couple of weeks ago, and he told me that there are about 10,000 people in the Kurdistan region with Dutch passports.
Yeah.
Like Dutch citizens of Kurdish and mainly Kurdish and some Iraqi origin.
Yeah. I think it's true. Like everywhere you come in Kurdistan, you find people that speak Dutch or have a link. I'm not sure if it's like 10,000. Some people talk even about between 2,000 and 3,000. But there's this large community in the Netherlands from all over Kurdistan, basically. And a lot of them, they returned after the fall of Saddam. So a lot of people, like also young Kurds, they were looking here for job opportunities to set up companies. Some of them, they have been successful. They have stayed. You also have some people that came and they went back to the Netherlands because they found it more difficult to basically reintegrate into the Kurdish society because they are more used to the Dutch society. So some of them also had a little bit difficulty finding their place back home in Kurdistan after living so long in the Netherlands, or even being brought up in the Netherlands, so having no background at all. Sometimes also that created some people that were sort of like disappointed because they had a different view of Kurdistan what they had than in the Netherlands. But there's a big community, and also you have many Dutch Kurds influential in certain positions in the government. For instance, you have the Zawa of the Netherlands. We have the Iraqi foreign minister Fuad Hussein,
who is Kurdish.
Who is Kurdish, and his wife was sadly passed away. My condolences to him, but his wife was Dutch. And you have also in the Kurdish political parties, you have several people with a Dutch background or in the Kurdish.
Do you come across these people in your every now and then, or in your daily life, Dutch or?
Yeah, I mean, anywhere I go, everywhere I go, even like a security guard speaks, so hey, I'm from the Netherlands, or I went to a Trump restaurant in The Hoek, and it turned out that the owner was a Dutch Kurd.
Wow.
Also, I have a restaurant in Ankawa called Le Def, and we had football. We're watching Dutch football. Also, the Dutch consulate was supporting us. So there were a lot of Dutch Kurds coming to watch the matches between the Netherlands and other countries in Erbil. So there were a lot of Dutch Kurds coming. And also what I sometimes have, that I'm in the restaurant and we have often we have live music. And then suddenly there's some Kurd that is visiting from the Netherlands, or they say, hey, do you know that I'm Dutch? And let's sit and talk a little bit. So recently I had also some Kurds, that there was a guy, he didn't visit Kurdistan for almost 20 years. And he was now visiting after 20 years. So he was very excited. And he was comparing already Kurdistan and Holland. But there's a big link. And also, for instance, there was in the Netherlands, we have a police chief who's actually Kurdish. So he came from Kurdistan. He went to the Netherlands. He now speaks very good Dutch, and he became a police chief of one of the provinces in the Netherlands.
Wow.
So we also have the reverse stories of and even we have Kurds in the Dutch politics. So, for instance, we have she's actually a Kurd from Turkey, from northern Kurdistan. She actually, there was a chance that she could become the prime minister of the Netherlands, but she became just the party leader of the Liberal Party. So she's the Liberal Party leader.
Is it a big party in the Netherlands, the Liberal Party?
I mean, it was one of the ruling parties in Kurdistan. And she visited Kurdistan when she was the Minister of Justice. And she was telling me, like, why don't teach me some Kurdish, because her Kurdish is not very good.
Wow.
So you also have those links.
So you have prominent Kurds in the Netherlands, prominent Kurdish Dutch here in different spheres. And your restaurant is called Le Daf, right?
Yeah.
It's Daf. Does it come from the Kurdish musical instrument?
Yeah, it comes from the hand drum instrument. So,
but it seems like it's a gathering place for Dutch.
Yeah, somehow we also have a Dutch food called bitterballen.
So
it's sort of like not meatballs, but something similar to that. And we only have it in the Netherlands. So we had that in the restaurant. And but in general, we have more like music and this kind of thing. So it's more like a place for people that love music and culture and Kurdish music. But we also had sometimes some football. So we also had like this
on
matches.
big screen.
Yeah, on big screen. So that's why also people also started to know that there's a Dutch person involved in this restaurant. So that's why they sometimes come to have a chat.
It helps, yeah.
Yeah.
And the live music is, do you have an agreement with a band that will perform there, or do you change the musicians?
I mean, with some, there are agreements that they come on a regular basis. And sometimes also we bring new people during the week. So it's not always the same singer. But with some singers, you have like a longer term agreement. So they come on a regular basis. But some of them, they also come on a non-regular basis. Like sometimes we experiment a little bit with different musicians. And also there's a lot of musicians in Kurdistan, as you know. So there's a lot of opportunities to do this stuff. And actually in the Netherlands, you don't have such a culture of a live music restaurant. It doesn't really, you have singers and stuff, but not like a culture that you sit somewhere, you have food and then you listen to a musician. It really doesn't exist a lot.
How did you come up with that name? Who decided Le Daf for the restaurant?
Well, it was actually the idea of my wife. She loves Kurdish music and culture, and she found, like, she was looking for like a very Kurdish name, but it's very difficult sometimes in Kurdistan to create a name for a company or a restaurant or something, because a lot of the names are already taken. So when they're taken, then you cannot use them as a name because they're already taken. So she thought about many names, and then she thought eventually about this name. And also we had an issue because you have also DAF as a company. You know, I think you have like you have this DAF construction cars and stuff like that.
Same name, same stuff.
DAF, so it's almost similar. So we have made it like Le DAF, so that it's like original. Because it's difficult to register a name. Like they always, like when you go to a lawyer, to the company registration, oh yeah, this DAF is taken, that one's not taken. If you add this letter, then maybe you can do it. So it's sometimes difficult.
And can we say it's a Kurdish restaurant, or what's the identity of your restaurant?
I mean, the place is fully Kurdish, like in the way also, it's not like a Kurdish food restaurant, let's say. We have also those places in Kurdistan. But for instance, the decoration, like even like, because we really love mountains, we have all like natural stones in the restaurant. Like the whole wall is full of natural stones
Where
that
do you
actually
get
are
them?
from the mountains.
You brought the stones from?
Yeah.
I love that idea.
Yeah. So there are natural stones. And then also in the restaurant, there's a lot of art which is related to Kurds, but also to Kurdish mythology. So for instance, you have a nice painting of the citadel, but we also have the Shamiran, I think, a depiction of Shamiran. We also have like on the wall, we have like Rash Balak. I think you call it in Kurdish Rash Balak, that you have like a a dancing group that are mixing men and women together. They're dancing. We have that on the wall, like a painting.
A painting, wow.
Yeah, so we have a lot of art. And then also we have a lot of books in the restaurant, mostly about Kurds.
Wow.
So we have a lot of books on Kurdish history and everything. It's mostly buying books, by the way.
So books are just for decoration, or someone can pick them up and read them or borrow them?
I mean, it's mostly like decoration, but sometimes some books are missing, so I'm sure some people take them.
Wow.
But in general, like, yeah. But it's not like people sit there and read a book or something. I haven't seen that a lot. But people, it's more like sort of a decoration. And
they are about Kurds and Kurdistan, you said?
Yeah, mostly. I mean, there's also some general books, but it's mostly like... I also had some very ancient books about Kurds, but I thought, let's keep them at home just in case,
Too valuable.
Too valuable, because I had some books from there was one time a Dutch-Kurdish Friendship Society in the 1960s, and they had some small publications in Dutch. So I thought maybe it's not good to put them because it's very rare to find those. And also I had like a book about written by an Iranian general about the Kurds, and it was also a book from the time of the Shah or something.
I think, do you remember the title or name? Someone Izzadi?
Yeah, I think it's something Izzadi or something.
And historically, do people in the Netherlands, how much do they know or have they known about the Kurds when you were growing up in the Netherlands? Is it like Kurds exist in the Dutch psyche for one reason or another, because of an adventurer or a philosopher or a Kurdish myth, something you remember?
Well, I mean, first of all, you have, of course, the Dutch-Kurdish community that has an effect. Like that lady who's like the party leader, Dilan. But in general, the Dutch don't have a lot of information about Kurds unless there's something related to conflict or something like that. So you had the war against ISIS, so then Kurds became known as the fighters that fought against ISIS and defeated ISIS. But apart from that, like the Kurdish culture or something, it's not so much. But of course, you also even have Kurdish singers that were performing in the Netherlands. But then most of the time, it's the most people that come are the public, like the customers are mostly Kurds that live there.
Because I recently, a Dutch journalist photographer came back to Kurdistan, who had been here in the 70s.
Yeah, but he's sort of an exception. But there are some also, one of the most well-known Kurdish experts or Kurdologists is called Dr. Martin van Bruinissen. And he has written a very famous work called, I think, Kurds, Agha and State or something. So it's more about it's more anthropological work focused on the tribes and the Aghas and the Sheikhs and this kind of stuff. Wow. And he's like one of the main experts, I would say, on the Kurds, and he has been for a long time. And then also there's other experts on Kurds or some other journalists that focus on Kurds. You also have one, actually he's more focused on philosophy, on academic philosophy, but he also speaks Kurmanji. So he also sometimes comes to Kurdistan, he speaks very good Kurmanji.
And he's Dutch.
Wow. So we also have some academics with a focus on Kurds. But of course, that's like more the academic world. So the academic world is most of the time very isolated, and it doesn't really translate into what the image that the public have about. So the Kurdish issue doesn't get the same attention, like, for instance, the war in Gaza or the Palestinian issue, which is like a very hot topic for both the left wing and the right wing. I mean, the left wing supposed to support mostly Gaza, and the right wing support mostly Israel.
Yeah.
But with the Kurds, you don't have such thing that it become like a topic for such a thing. But for instance, also Kurds, sometimes they come into the public due to, for instance, you have the general conflict in Syria, and then Kurds are part of that issue, so they also get attention as part of the debate on Syria. So for instance, when I was in the Netherlands last time, I went to there was a commission that had in the parliament that had a debate on the future of Syria, and the Kurds also were some Kurdish representatives who are also speaking there on the future of Syria in the Dutch parliament. So of course, also when we had, for instance, the protests in Iran, also it got attention in the Netherlands because there was also a Kurdish link to it, because the protest started over a Kurdish woman that was killed by the by the police in Iran.
Exactly.
So sometimes the Kurds they get, but often the Kurds also they get more in when it's about a different topic, like the general situation in Iran or Syria, or with the war against ISIS. But there's also now Dutch programs being made, for instance, about Kurdistan. I know like a Dutch-Kurdish filmmaker who's now busy with making a program here.
Recently?
Yeah, recently. And there has been also some programs in the past about Kurdistan or also myself, I have spoken at some events. For instance, they had an event about stateless people. I also spoke at the event about the future of Syria as one of the speakers, and I was talking mostly about the future of the Kurds.
Wow.
And it was also after the fall of Saddam and like that the U.S. when they liberated Iraq from Saddam, there was also a lot of focus on Iraq. So then the Kurds they also got more attention through basically
Whenever something happens,
Yeah.
related. We talked about your participation in a actually very popular Kurdish TV show.
Yeah.
How long was it? A month long? Because normally they are a month long, called Adiabin.
Yeah, the Ramadan series.
A Ramadan series, exactly. That's why a month. And they called you to play the role of an officer, I think.
Yeah.
Poor.
Yeah, I mean, basically they were looking for a foreigner that could play like a British colonial officer. So I was the unlucky one that had to play someone that wanted to, was looking for I think it was the grandfather of President Masoud Barzani. So it was about, I think the series is mostly about the time that the Brits were still in Iraq and sort of how they were dealing with the Kurds. And it's like mostly focused on that. But I didn't participate in the whole month. I just participated in like one small piece, which was about that the British army was trying to look for the leader of the Kurdish movement. They were trying to find him, and they asked the shepherd, like, "Do you want to? Where is Barzani?" And he was saying, "I will never give up the leader." So it was more about that specific topic.
And they approached you to play the role of this officer?
Yeah.
No audition, no test?
No, they just called me and said, "What are you know?"
You are a foreigner.
Yeah, so it was more. Yeah, I mean, I have also played some roles in other movies. Like there was another movie called Baghdad Messi. I was there like a U.S. mercenary, I think.
Wow.
There was another movie. I was playing a U.S. soldier. One time, an Ukrainian doctor.
All made here in...
Yeah, all made in Kurdistan. Some of them were more like Kurdish productions, but some of them were also like more international.
Really?
So there was a movie, it was like, I think something about the U.S. It was a story about U.S. Army and someone got kidnapped or something like that. So it was more about Iraq, actually, but they filmed it in Kurdistan. And Baghdad Messi is also actually about Baghdad. But they decided that it was easier to film in the Erbil citadel. So most of the filming was done in the citadel, and it was actually quite international because they also had like a Belgian crew and like some Dutch explosion experts, or it was the Belgian were the explosion. And there were also like racing experts, so they had some people to help them how to do the driving part.
Wow.
So they had like actually. But in general, it doesn't happen a lot, like this kind of international movies. I think there have been some people that have attempted to attract.
Which film was the first that got you into the world of acting? Well,
I'm not sure if you can call it world of acting if I'm in that.
I thought you were only in Adiabin, but apparently you've been to a number or such.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes also they ask me for advertisements, but yeah, there have been several. But I think the first one was that film Baghdad Messi. But also I've been sometimes invited to some entertainment programs. So they have like in these entertainment programs they approach like foreigners that speak Kurdish or
foreign advertisement or local?
No, it was like they just have foreigners that participate in the program. And then because they speak Kurdish, so they had someone from I don't know, some guy from what was it? I think somewhere in the Balkans. He was living in Kurdistan. They had some people from Bangladesh that because they always speak very good Kurdish, and they had some other people. So I had some of the shows like they bring some foreigners, and then can you also join? So there was like this sort of weird, in my opinion, weird, because I was not used to that. Like sort of this quiz shows, you have to do a quiz and you have to do some challenges and stuff.
On local TV.
Yeah, and even I had to sing once, like
I've seen some of
yeah.
those. I
Or
must.
they had an animal in a box and you have to put your hand in the box, that was a bit that was a bit
Gladiator.
uncomfortable. Yeah, they had a monkey and a snake, and it was a bit. I think the monkey was more scared than us, but yeah.
Wow.
that was
And do they give you a script or the storyline and give you some time to prepare, or they say show up tomorrow for filming?
I mean, it depends on some of these movies. You don't really need a script because there's no text, so you're more like a figurant.
No talking.
So no,
Mm.
I mean, actually, I never played a main role. It was always like sort of a figurant, so you don't really have a text. But some of these Kurdish programs, when they invite you, they don't really, they don't let you know before what is going to happen. They will explain when you are there.
Like the evening TV shows.
Yeah, the evening. So they'll tell you what you're there. But for instance, I had a quiz, and it was one was about Kurdish politics, and I had 10 out of 10. Like I knew all the answers. So one time I was in a taxi, and the taxi driver said, "Yeah, but they told you all the answers." I said, "It's not like that." But then I had to do a quiz about something simple like what you call a pan and a glass in Kurdish. And at that time, I didn't know. I didn't know what is a spoon in Kurdish or something. I knew the political Kurdish, but not like the simple Kurdish.
I'm
So-
not surprised that
Yeah.
you passed yet, that you got 10 out of 10, because you are very well versed or aware of Kurdish history and politics, especially modern politics, we can say.
Yeah. I mean, they showed basically some pictures of Kurdish political leaders. Like, okay, that's Netjer van Barzani, that's Hero Talabani. Even they had a presenter from Ruda Shah Amin. Like, I also knew who he was. I mean, I worked in Ruda, so I know.
Wow.
But it was sort of funny that they were actually more surprised than me that I knew the answers. But also, yeah, I also know a lot about Kurdish history and stuff. So also in the Netherlands, I had one time with some Kurdish students. There was also a quiz. I was also quite good in the political part.
Wow.
But yeah, there's a lot of. I mean, that's also I got interested in the Kurds. It was basically mainly through like a final project for history in secondary school, which was like a on Kurds, and through that I got to know a lot of Kurds in the Netherlands, and they sort of pulled me into writing because I started writing about Kurds already. It was like 2004 or 5, and it was a Dutch-Kurdish website, but it was more a voluntary website, not like a professional.
Not paid.
It was not a paid job or something. It was more like as a student, and we wrote news about Kurds.
Oh, yeah. So it goes back to that time, your familiarity with the Kurds.
Yeah, and
Not
at that
with
time,
him.
yeah, and that time we were also doing like interviews, with artists or politicians or something, but more, and also a lot of news about Kurds. But at that time also there were not so many Kurdish websites in English. I think now it's like an explosion.
Yeah.
But at that time, I remember when Ruda English started. At that time there was almost no English website on Kurds, like very few, like Kurdish Media and eKurd, and that was it.
That's
But
true.
now if you want to search for it, you will find some website that nobody ever heard of, and they have like regular news on Kurds in English. But at that time, it was not. And now also, of course, you have Facebook and Instagram and social media, TikTok. So there's also different ways of
Many mediums.
medium. Like a lot of people now, you have Kurdish vloggers and stuff that produce their own content about different topics.
So you do not miss conflict, going to the front lines and doing that kind of work? You are.
I mean, I like to go sometimes, I will not call it conflict, but like going more like on the ground, to a certain area. Like it's because I'm a little bit at the moment, I just became a father and I have also a restaurant. So it's a bit difficult for me. Thank you. So it's a bit difficult for me to just go and spend like 6 months in Syria or something. I don't have time to do such a thing. But I mean, I'm already in Kurdistan. So it's not that I'm now in Netherlands and I go to Kurdistan for a few days or something. So I'm already in the area anyway, so it's not the very
heart of the Middle East.
Yeah, I'm already there, so it's not that I'm like a roving reporter from the Netherlands or something. Because I also have another Dutch journalist friend who lives, I think, in Dubai, and he sometimes goes outside of Dubai, go to some areas for like a few days, and then he goes back to his family.
Yeah, for you, I guess it's a lot easier, whatever, if you want to go to Syria, Mosul, if something happens, God forbid, you are close to the action. Thank you so much, Wladimir. This was really enjoyable. Thank you for coming to Erbil edition.
Thank
I
you.
saw your stories. I did not know many of these things.
Yeah.
And I know how popular you are in Kurdistan.
Thank you.
And thank you for sharing some of these stories with us.
Thank you for the invitation and good luck with the program.
Thank you.